Mr. Robot is one of those weird situations where we kind of gave up, I suppose you'd say, halfway through season 3-ish. I can't remember why, because we were watching it when it was, first airing, and we were enjoying it. I just think maybe it's, again, just hypothesizing here, but it was possibly a case of all the convoluted plots, we just weren't in the right headspace for it. Sounds like a very us thing to do. But we were at the end of something else, and we're like, well, what should we watch? And we put it on again. And we decided that it would be best to go from the start, because there's so much in 3.5 seasons that we'd have to be reminded of to really get to grips with it. We may as well just watch through and enjoy it. And this is where I'm going to put my spoiler warning, quite early for me, I know. Because I think in something like this, something that has, twists and interesting concepts and a lot of meat to pick apart, I think it's one of those you should really experience firsthand. And that goes not just for Mr. Robot, it's anything like that. You should really experience it firsthand, get an awareness yourself, and then, come back once you've watched it, tell me why I'm wrong and I've drawn the wrong conclusions. Fine, do that. But seriously, watch it yourself first. So with that spoiler warning out of the way, the first season's reveal that Mr. Robot was not really there was well done. Hat tips to everyone involved, from Rami Malek, Christian Slater, all the way up to Sam Esmail. They made sure that it actually isn't ruined on a second viewing. When you already know, because sometimes that can happen, when you know the twist, it's like, I guess I already know, but we still could enjoy looking at how well they put it together, so that it's actually believable when that reveal happens. I know they do a quick, a few scenes, but when you're watching it through with the knowledge, it really changed it, because any of those scenes that you've got Mr. Robot interacting with people, Elliot's up in the corner, quietly. Elliot doesn't interact with the group when Mr. Robot does, because they're the same person. And I'm saying Elliot, we'll come back to that in a bit, don't worry. But that whole thing of how it's been set up was so well done. And then, we move forward, and there's new things being layered in. We've had teases of White Rose, but then we really start to bring her in, and we bring Philip Price in. It really builds over time. And again, that might have been, like I say, what made us go away from it. But here, right now, or when we were watching it, we were in the right space. We were engaged. And whilst I've given praise, to some of those people, I really think BD Wong was absolutely brilliant. It was a masterclass in how to act multiple different people with the same basic physical body. Because Minister Zhang is very different to White Rose. Voice feminization isn't about just speaking in a slightly higher tone or more breathy or something like that. There's a lot of nuance and elements. Some of those factors do come in, but it's not just, speak like this, like to be like a girl. It's nothing like that. And whoever trained BD Wong in that did an amazing job. And of course, he did very well himself. These were two distinct characters inhabiting the same body, which again, is very much what Mr. Robot is about. Elliot is multiple people in one body. So having someone as an opposing version of that, it almost feels like a classic superhero thing, the equal but opposite. And it's such a clever way to do that. You can sympathise. White Rose's intentions are absolutely pure and beautiful. The idea of wanting a better world where she could be who she wanted to be. She didn't have to be constrained by the global problems, yes, but also the cultural things from her own heritage. And I say her because I think White Rose is the true version of the person we know as Minister Zhang. I genuinely think that is very much a trans allegory. And yes, okay, trans is a baddie. It's a thing that has happened. But at the end of the day, looking at the opposite side, that's inclusion for you. If anyone can be a bad person, so can trans people then, because they are anyone. So I can understand why maybe that might cause some people uncomfortability and think, they're falling into a trope. But I think it's believable, and that's the important bit. But all of these reveals and everything, you're building this thing, and there's so many great moments and also shocking moments, like the death of Joanna, Tyrell's wife, and all of the stuff around that. Just don't worry, just put the baby in the foster care system, it doesn't matter. The heartlessness of some of these people, but then you're also seeing that some people are actually being controlled. We see a lot of that with Dom, played by Grace Gunner, later on, when she takes over from Santiago as the FBI mole. Her family is basically being held to ransom without knowing they're being held to ransom. She's the only one who knows, and if she doesn't go along with it, their life's in danger, potentially ending. All of these kind of things, and you sympathise a lot more with some of the people who you've seen as the bad guys throughout. You actually realise that they're doing what they were doing because they had to. They and the people they cared about were at risk. But you build and build and build, and then we come to season 4, the culmination. We find out all about the plans and the fact that Minister Zhang had planned this. Like, even the stuff that happened to Angela and Elliot when they were kids. The fact of losing their parents was not part of the plan directly per se, but the whole thing with the Washington Township situation, it was all part of this long plan. Whether it was part of when it was originally written or whether it was something they did later on, I don't care, to be honest, because I can believe that it's part of the original plan for White Rose. And that's beautiful. So well done. And then we get the thing that I said I'd come back to. Because I don't want to go into too much depth over every little thing. I might do kind of a similar thing with Orange is the New Black, maybe come and visit this as a bigger project in the future, but I wanted to talk a bit more in depth on this. But yeah, that reveal that Elliot, as far as we know, as far as we've been, with the person we've experienced all this through for the last 4 seasons-ish, is not actually Elliot. This is yet another persona. This is the Hackerman persona, if you will, if you've seen all the memes. That's what this person is. They are not the true Elliot. And the idea that, again, we see scenes floating that idea back of, are you you? And it's like, yes, I'm me. But that's not what Darlene was asking. She was kind of like, she wants the real Elliot. And there's this whole element of this person has been there, like Mr. Robot, to protect him. And I want to come back to Mr. Robot and the protection thing in a minute as well. I do have to talk about that if we're going to talk about this kind of stuff. But this is yet another layer. This other stage of protection. This is the one that's like, you wanted to make a better world, and I'm going to make sure that we can do that. Another layer of protection of the real Elliot. But he's kind of taken to use the term from Split a little, he's kind of taken the spotlight too much. And this is where it's been kind of stressful and sort of tiring and exhausting for him to maintain this persona, because it's not the real Elliot. This is still just technically a fabrication. This is another layer. And this is why, it's such an interesting way of portraying DID. Because in most cases, as far as I'm aware, they're not necessarily as aware, if you will, as Elliot seems to be of his alters. But the fact that the Elliot we see isn't the real Elliot might be the explanation for that. The alters might know of each other, but the sort of real person, if you will, the origin, I guess. I don't know how DID works in depth. I'm very sorry. It's a gap in my knowledge. But from my understanding, it's possibly more logical for alters to be aware of each other, if not the core personality. But one of the reveals that really made me want to do this video, and I will say now, I'm going to not talk too heavily on it because it's not something I want to talk about too much, but I will have to mention about abuse of minors, because it's a thing that's mentioned. So if that's something that's upsetting for you, like, yeah, you can. This is going to be the last thing I think I say in the video. If not, I'll put a timestamp up for when you can resume. But seriously, look after yourself first. Do not just watch the entire video just to give me the time. I do not want that. But there is the reveal that Elliot's dad, which I don't think we ever get an actual name for. So Mr. Robot did abuse Elliot. And that's part of what some of the personas were created for. They took that so that Elliot didn't have to. And this is again common in a lot of DID situations. The first alters often come out to protect from things like abuse. That can be neglect as well. I count that under the umbrella. But the fact that, yes, that happened, and that was even before the revelation that the Elliot we've seen isn't the real Elliot. So this is not... It's so weird, like the layers. This is where it's kind of hard to unpick. Are we saying the abuses happened to this Elliot, or was it the real Elliot? Was this the generation of this Elliot? All that kind of stuff. And it gets quite complex to talk about. But I have a lot of respect for Christian Slater to go, do you know what? Yes, I accept that part of the character. He's been a producer, I think, from the start. I think Rami Malek was about season 3 that he got added as a producer. But yeah, him being willing to play a character with that background and playing it so we actually sympathise, because this isn't really the person who did that. This is an idealised version in Elliot's mind, if you will. So you can't blame the version that we're seeing. However, it's the same basic, form. And that uncomfortability that I felt, I literally sat there and I felt a gut punch. I really just, I needed to sit with that for a moment and deal with it. It was such a heavy reveal. And like I say, it was handled, I think, very well, very diplomatically, and very sensitive to people who've gone through that. It didn't glorify it, it didn't try and make excuses. It was this happened, and you can feel bad about it. You can hate me for it. Even though I'm not really him, you can hate me, but it's a thing that really did happen. And coming to terms with that. But that's what this is. That the whole series is someone wanting to change the world, or multiple people, I guess, wanting to change the world to make it better, and struggling to do that, but also trying to reconnect and just balance out themselves, be who they truly are, be authentic. It's very much a look at what people will do under stress, what people will do to improve their lives, what people will do for the people they care about. This is a series that has so many layers, and considering the whole premise that started it was guys hacking the world to get rid of debt, to bring down a big corporation. What it gave us from that short premise deserves massive praise. And in fact, there is one thing I want to talk about. Let's not end with the most recent thing being something quite so heavy. Let us praise the cinematography of this. There's a whole thing, and again, it's not really my area of expertise, the whole rule of thirds idea. So if you divide your screen into like a 9 grid, 3x3, all of those intersecting points where you draw the lines, that's where you want to put stuff in a frame. And Mr. Robot does that so well. You'll see people like on the extreme left or right, or like up or down of the screen, but they are following the rule of thirds. It feels right. And when they're not, it's for a good reason. One of the things I noticed though, you will often have one speaker on one side of the screen, and then like the coverage, if you will, the opposite shot, will be on the other side of the screen. And for a natural conversation, you'd expect them to kind of be facing inwards. If I was on the screen and I'm like conversing with another character and I'm facing like kind of that way, you would expect me to be in that corner, and vice versa. But they often do it flipped. So the person looking that way is in that corner. So they're actually facing opposite. If you overlaid it, they're facing away from each other. And a lot of the show is about people not really connecting. As well as everything else. There's a whole thing about people not really connecting, people not being true again and authentic. So having this weird, subtle and totally unconscious disconnect of the characters lets you see that divide. When you have two characters on screen talking, they're facing each other. And sometimes you will have it where they're facing the right ways to make it look like they're actually conversing if you overlaid it. But those are the rarities, and that's why it stands out more. That might be me overthinking it. Again, I might have completely misunderstood it. Film theory, not the channel, but the concept, again, isn't my area of expertise. This is just a layperson coming to, and interpreting it my own way. But yeah, Mr. Robot is amazing, and I'm sad that it took me so long to get through it, but I'm glad I did. And just for the curious, Watch Dogs came out a similar time. I think it's just one of those like convergent ideas. I do think later Watch Dogs titles took some inspiration in certain ways, I will say. But for the most part, I just think it's convergent ideas. It happens. The rise of technology, hackers, Anonymous were coming out, all that kind of stuff. That was what the zeitgeist was. I do not think either Ubisoft or SMSmail copied each other. But yeah, Mr. Robot, definitely enjoyable. I think I might revisit it with a bigger video, maybe sort of exploring more of the things on their own. But I'm already about 15 minutes in, so I will let you get back to the rest of your day. And thank you very much for letting me talk about this. And until next time, as always, take care.